Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. We just had the Hungarian GP, and it felt like Groundhog Day a little bit. Rob, what do you think of today?
Oh, don't. It is Groundhog Day. Last week I wanted to start and be moaning about Ferrari, and I want to do it all over again. But let's let's not do that. Let's celebrate the fact that it was a very good Hungarian GP. They go on about how it's so difficult to overtake, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, despite my frustration with Ferrari, which we will get onto later. So let's do. It's actually going to be a slightly shorter format this week because we'll have news and social. We'll have our race review. We've got a DRS guest, but then we haven't got a preview. And given that we're recording this about 30 minutes after the race finished, Fantasy's not updated either. So it could be a short one to see us into the summer break. But
No, that's a good way to do it.
yeah,
That's a good way to do it. So
exactly.
last week we got on something that was kind of interesting, right? Ferrari had their problems, but we were talking a bit about Carlos and the unsafe release in the pits. And it came out this week that it was actually on Carlos. He came out on the red light. And we had talked about how does that work? Isn't there a person who pushes a button? We actually, very thankfully, have Pit Lane Paul kind of explaining how pit stops are facilitated.
Hi, just listened to your podcast, so I thought I'd answer a couple of questions from it. So pit stops are they'll basically be a guy that can over. So everything on a pit stop is automatic. The wheel guns have got like a sensor in them that will sense when the wheel's tight enough. He'll then turn a light on the wheel gun green. The gunman then knows he's done his job. Once that system is complete, the front two guns have detected that the wheels are tight and the lights have gone green. It will drop the front jack. Likewise with the rear, once the rear's done, it will drop the rear jack. All that's done automatically. And then finally, the next automatic thing is the light goes green. So, with regards to what happened with Carlos, there'll be a person who is sat there with basically an override button that can override. So there is a law that if someone comes into your window in the pit lane, there's all little markers in the pit lane. If you ever see a shot down the pit lane, you'll see loads of little flags stuck out like from the pit wall with different team logos on. You might never see it. If a car is in that window, and I can give the exact figure of how far from your pit box that is, then you are not allowed to release the car. So there'll be a guy with a button that can override the automatic system, keep the light red until there's a car out of that system, basically. So obviously he didn't override the system. Carlos drove away. You're exactly right. He did nothing wrong. Touching further on your things, your stats. So Paul Ricard, just one thing with the overtakes, you've got to bear in mind that Paul Ricard was raced on for years back in probably 60s, 70s, and obviously then it became a test track, so wasn't on the calendar for a long time. So the actual fact that it's had a lot of overtakes, it is surprising. I'm never going to say it's not surprising, considering, how the tracks are driven on. However, yeah, you have to factor in that it's not a new track. It's a very old track. You think Prost has got the most amount of wins there out of any driver. So, yeah, you have to be realistic on that. Finally, your stat about the 300 club and no one ever going on to win a race. I mean, wow. That's pretty amazing. That is a pretty amazing stat. And one I didn't know. But there we go. Anyway, enjoy. Good podcast. Speak to you after Budapest.
And that's super cool to hear that about how the button process works. And I'm glad also that last week I kind of picked up on what was the front jack guy doing. He seemed to hesitate and go back in again. And like to hear Paul say, yeah, what's he doing? He's not supposed to be going in anywhere near there. That shows that basically we could be working in the pit lane, Brian. Basically,
Yeah, well, maybe not in the pit lane, at least in the Ferrari strategy team.
hold it, keep your powder dry.
Sorry.
So, other things doing the rounds this week. Porsche are going to buy a 50% stake in Red Bull, which will see a 10-year deal kick into life. So, and that includes when it's a stake in Red Bull, but it includes all of the GP aspect of it as well. So, should be seeing a Porsche badge stuck on the side of a Red Bull in the near future.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And then, as obviously the biggest news of the week, Sebastian Vettel announcing he's retiring. However, just for 10 seconds, humorous Dirty Siders. It was fascinating because Rob had been working on a Seb blog for a few days. We dropped the blog, I think it was Tuesday night. He sent me a note, hey, I just published. On Wednesday morning, we got it out on Twitter. A couple hours later, Seb joined Instagram, and Rob and I were like, whoa, this is fantastic timing. And then a couple hours later, he announced he was retiring. So I don't know if he realized that the dirty side was doing an expose on him and he decided it best to retire, but the timing was definitely interesting. I mean, Rob, tell folks a little bit about the blog if they wanted to go check it out.
Yeah, we'll do. But first, just kind of, you said a couple of hours, right? So I think it was actually 10, 12 hours between him, maybe even longer, of him joining Instagram and then announcing his one and only post on Instagram is his retirement thing. That guy picked up a ridiculous number of followers from the moment he joined Instagram. And Twitter lost its mind when it's like, Seb's on social, Seb's on social. He got so many followers. It's just such a short space. And then boom, one and only post is to say good night, Vienna. And we kind of the blog kind of, if you go and take a look at it, it was talking about the fact that I feel he's a bit of an unappreciated champion. For some reason, some people, not everybody, but some people sort of diminish his Red Bull years of, well, Red Bull had a dominant car. Yeah, so what? Seb still drove the wheels off it and won 4 consecutive world championships. So it was kind of a half and half piece of a bit of love for Seb and then taking a look at who might take his seat, which is, of course, what the internet completely got saturated with following his announcement that he was retiring at the end of the year.
Well, we do have some stats to explain how amazing Seb really was. And for this first one, we'd been asking for some jingle options for SapStats, and we've got 2 of them here ready to play. I know others are thinking and working on it. The first one is from, and Rob, please correct me because I'm remote today. I believe it's Eyal's son. Do I have that right?
That's right, yeah. One of our listeners over in Israel, he got his 14-year-old son to compose a jingle, and it's awesome.
Great. Yeah, here it is. I love the tire gun in there. That is just, that's so good. That is so good. And because this is retiring 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel, we have 2 Sapstat intros for today. This one is from listener Mark, his son Jaden, who might also be a listener. I hope you are, Jaden. And here it is on a piano, better than Rob did.
Looking for Sapstat, my friend, you come to the right place.
Yes, you have come to the right place for SapStats, my friend. So
2 totally opposite music genres, which I love. We've kind of got like the electric dance type SapStats with the wheel gun, and then just honky tonk on the piano. It's amazing.
Amazing. These are great. Keep them coming in. Those 2 are fantastic. So he's one of only 3 F1 world champions with the last name starting with V, for people who are curious about the alphabet. Max, Seb, and of course, friend of the dirty side, Jacques Villeneuve. World champion in 2010, 11, 12, and 13, so 4 in a row with Red Bull. But people often forget he was second in the championship in 2009, 2017, and 2018, those last 2 obviously with Ferrari. So he had 3 runner-ups as well. Runners-up? He drove for 5 constructors, and a lot of people don't remember the first one, BMW Sauber. He actually was a test driver, and he filled in, I think, for Kubica when he was ill. And then, of course, most people know the Toro Rosso, Red Bull, Ferrari, and now Aston Martin days, driving for none other than Mike Crack. You can never find enough times to put that in there. But I would say since and including 2019, he hasn't really been in a good car. And the end of the Ferrari era, especially that last year, you saw some of it on Drive to Survive, but you saw a lot of it on the track with the arguing with Charles, and it wasn't the best end to his Ferrari days. But straight stats, these are the ones that get me. And I'll go through a couple of them here. 53 wins. That's 18% of the time he entered a race he won. 57 poles. That's almost 20% of the time. 38 fastest laps. 122 podiums. Now, for people watching the last couple years, newer fans, you probably haven't seen Seb on the podium in a while, with the exception of that Baku run last year. So 122 podiums, 8 hat tricks, 4 Grand Slams. And here's my last favorite piece that I wanted to highlight, and I'll let you take the rest, Rob, if you like. But if you drove because he led 11,280 miles. Led Grand Prix for 11,280 miles. If you started in New York City, at the ocean, and drove to LA, back to New York, back to LA, back to New York, you'd still have enough miles to make it to Newark Airport, and you would have led the Grand Prix for all those. That's insane.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, and I mean, there are a lot of stats around him. I think he's youngest ever race winner. He's in a very small club of drivers to have won 4 consecutives. So you've got Hamilton, Vettel, Fangio, and Schumacher. Schumacher obviously did one better, did 5 in a row, but it's a very, very small club of drivers that can just have that consistency to thread multiple world championships together. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think this is going to be the end of the Seb story. You know, he's announced in terms of kind of looking back his career and doing all the stats. We needed to bring it out this week because he's announced. It was a bit weird as everyone's treating it like, well, he's left F1 now. It's like, well, no, he's still got half a season to drive yet, guys. So we're still going to get to see him. Like, there's all these, I can't believe we're never going to see Seb on a Grand Prix again. Well, you probably are, like at least 9 of them.
Exactly.
So I'm sure come the end of the season, we'll have it'll be good to do a look back at Vettel's career in full. But no, a nice set of stats there, and even better to be able to play the two tunes. Moving on to other Germans. Now, this one has been tweeted by F1 Insider. I'm not sure it's been ratified because the source he gave was someone else I saw tweet it, who everyone's saying, oh, this isn't an official source. But take it with a pinch of salt, maybe. But Mick Schumacher is not going to renew his contract with the Ferrari Drivers Academy, and he's the first choice to replace Seb. I don't know if they're going for that whole mentor-mentee. You know, Seb likes to put his arm around Mick, and maybe he's put him forward for the seat. But apparently Mick's first choice, and Hulkenberg is the second option. But I don't know. What do you think of that, Brian?
I think I'm surprised the name Hulkenberg came up at all, if I'm being totally honest. I recognize he has history with the team, but I feel like there are more drivers with more potential, is the way I would say it, than Nico. Younger, who have more upside. But the Mick piece is fascinating, and that's a great theory, whether it's a conspiracy theory or not, that he would, as you say, put his arm around the heir apparent to him and do that. That would be pretty cool. But,
yeah,
I also think it's hard, though, right? Would Stroll want a driver younger and potentially better than him in that seat? Because
that's the one thing, right? And then the other thing is, you know, Haas and Aston, a lot of people are saying it's a step backwards to go to Aston, and surely Ferrari aren't going to let Mick not continue with them. I mean, the name alone, with along with Ferrari, kind of has so much history. I don't know. It's an interesting one because he's shown moments this year where he can get racy when the car underneath him is good enough. I'd be inclined to, I mean, obviously we don't know the inside thing, but you'd think we'll stick with Haas a little bit longer and then see what opens up. It doesn't seem like that career progression to go to Aston, if I'm honest, unless they've got something huge coming down the pipe. But I don't know what Mike Crack is thinking, but I just wanted to throw that in there again.
How many gallons of gas does Mike Crack have in his fridge for the break is really what I'm curious about.
You can't rehash the same joke, Brian.
I can.
No, you can't.
So, you know, with Seb retiring, we often talk about great stuff to check out on social and on video. There was an older one on the F1 channel about Sebastian Vettel's top 10 moments of brilliance. Please go check it out. I've watched it a couple times over the years, and it was great to dust that off. But they recently dropped Sebastian Vettel, Genius and Joker, which is both are good videos. So feel free to check those out. But it wasn't all Seb all week. There was, and I know, Rob, I know you love this. There was the 2022 Tires in Focus F1 TV Tech Talk. Rosanna Tennant and Albert Fabergé. So good. You loved it, didn't you, Rob?
Do you know what? After you did your so good in the notes, I was like, right, I'm going to give Brian the benefit of the doubt here, and I'm going to invest 8 minutes in watching this video. And it only really ratified my thinking of, there's something wrong with you. That was the most boring 8 minutes I've watched in my life. They just went round and pointed at tyres and went, oh, look, there's a little hole in here where I can measure the tread depth. Guess what? So there is in my road car. That's hardly cutting edge. Oh, look, we can scrape a bit of gunk off the tyre. Woo! I tell you what, if you really think you love tyres, then go and watch this 8 minutes because that will really confirm for you whether you do or you don't.
Do you know how many hours or minutes you're allowed to keep the tires in the blankets? It's
I
3
do not
hours.
care. I don't
70
care.
degrees Celsius maximum, 158 Fahrenheit. And of course, each track has minimum PSI. And we'll talk about we'll talk about
Oh,
tires today
sorry.
because Ferrari messed that up again. But anyway, the only other note I'd have is two quick ones on videos. Let's get to the race. One, I really enjoyed the Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon start-stop challenge. Now, weirdly, this wasn't on an Alpine channel. I don't even know if I follow Alpine, but it's on the Formula One channel. They're in an Alpine A110, I believe. Fellow car nerds, correct me or confirm for me. But they really don't understand the game, and so what it is, they have to like guess stats about their partner, and Fernando starts driving, but he's like trying to read his card for the stat to cue Esteban, but he's driving. Yeah, I think it's supposed to be the other way around. But anyway, it was fun. I think they realized at the end they'd hosed up the order of it. But I gotta say, like, you never really see Esteban and Fernando as buddy buddy. They had fun in this thing. It was fun to check out. Now I'm sure they undid a little bit of that on lap one of the Hungarian Grand Prix, but we'll talk about that in a second. In the last video, please, if you haven't, I tweeted this out, and every week we kind of look for something new or someone new to follow. Last week, obviously, we highlighted Centurion Lewis. Keep following him. But I would say this week, Lollipop Man. If you didn't see the video of George from the French Grand Prix, it is so good. I sent it out earlier. Please just Google it, Lollipop Man. I also followed him on YouTube so I can watch it on my TV. He is great.
It is. That was one I'll give you. So this is the struggle I have with your rating system. So you put so good against Lollipop Man and so good against those tires. Yet for me they couldn't be more polar opposites. So I have to really kind of tread with caution when I see your so good badge.
What's interesting is you haven't reflected enough to think maybe the rating system inside you is broken. Just a note.
I couldn't even have that inward journey to assess my rating system because I fell asleep too quickly looking at the tyre video.
Oh, boy.
Anyway.
So this week, obviously, was the Hungarian Grand Prix. I almost said French Grand Prix. I tweeted just before we started this recording that you could just listen to last week's pod and get half the value out of it because, man, it was interesting. But so we walked into FP1 with hopes of a lot of new stuff. Aston Martin had their, and I'll let you talk a little bit about this more, but the armchair rolls on the back of their wing, on the front, I guess, of the back wing. The white Ferrari of Haas, which did not work out. And then Checo was sneezing all over the track, and McLaren showed some pace. What did you think of the practices this week, Rob?
The Aston is one of these examples of where you've got to admire the ingenuity of these guys finding the loopholes within loopholes within loopholes to kind of come up with something they can get as an advantage. I just hope, this is one where I hope the loophole gets closed and the FIA adjust the regs if they can. Otherwise, everyone's going to follow suit. Because what they've essentially done is the rear wings this year were redesigned in a way to put no end plates on the end of the rear wing, which apparently leads the design to having this whole kind of throw in the air upwards and outwards, and is part of what's making the cars better to follow. What Aston have found is some mathematical loophole, as I've said, I've used that word too many times, where they can put a fold or a bend in the side of the rear wing, which isn't an end plate, but is. I mean, it just is. They've designed it to curl in a way in accordance with the regulations, which now essentially creates this. They were calling it like an armchair roll. It is. There's no other word for it. It looks like the end of a classic kind of 1970s armchair with those rolled over armrests, and they've created end plates. Now, if that takes the place of an end plate and it distorts the air coming off the back of the car again and in any way makes it harder for them to follow, then you do want those ones clamped down on, because I don't want to see cars not being able to follow, because this year's been brilliant. So I hope that loophole gets crushed.
Yeah, agreed. The only highlight I had from all the practice was at the end of FP3, in the rain, we had an evolving track. And we'll say that a little bit about quali because it continued to evolve. But what was fascinating was at the very end, the one and the only Nicholas Gotifi with the fastest lap. He topped FP3. How amazing was that?
It was amazing-ish. I think it
Oh,
was
come
made more
on!
amazing of people just saying who it was. The track was drying. I think whoever got that final running goes fastest, if I'm honest. It was drying so much, it was evolving so quickly that the lap times are coming down, 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 down. So whoever just happened to do the last run, as long as they got a decent run, I think we're going to be quickest. But it was just amazing just for the reaction on Twitter alone. I mean, all of the Go Tiffy memes doing the rounds, and then people saying, "Oh, and if it doesn't dry and actually we can't run quali, then Latifi's on pole." Well, that theory, in fact, even I was in on that, like looking at it thinking, oh yeah, that's right. FP3 can be used for quali if they can't run quali. Well, Mother Nature decided that she'd had enough of the wet stuff, and we had a completely dry quali, which was bizarre because it was only a couple of hours later. We went from like monsoons to a dry track, which was just crazy. But what it did mean was that it was a green track, which for new listeners means that all the rubber that had been down on the track and helping give the cars grip had all been washed away by the rain. So every lap of quali that went round, again, that's where they kept referring to it as continuing to evolve. Every lap, more rubber goes down, more grip. Therefore, the next cars can do faster ones. So everyone was doing that, hanging out to the last minute to see what they could do. Because you just wanted to be the last one round. And as we'll see as we get to the race review, Mercedes was showing some pace. They did 1 and 2 in Q1, and we lost Albon, Gasly, Latifi, poor old Vettel, and Tsunoda.
And then Q2 was fascinating, right, where we saw Checo, and everyone's giving the stewards credit. So they took a track limits, and they took his fastest lap away. But then he stays out because of that, and then they reinstate it. And I like the idea of them getting it right, saying, you know what, we messed up, you really didn't go over. And it looked like he was avoiding some traffic as well. So he avoided traffic, didn't go over the line. They eventually reinstate the lap, but it was almost like a too little too late. And I'm not saying this as a Checo fan. I'm saying this, the dude got hosed a little bit in the whole situation.
Well, hang on. He got hosed by his team. So let's just pretend this was a red car rather than a Red Bull, right? And this was Ferrari. They would have had a field day with what happens here. So Perez gets his time taken away. Okay, fine. It wasn't a particularly fantastic time anyway. It would have left him on the danger zone of being dropped out. And
Agreed.
then, so do we see him go back, regroup, come out and start doing some fast runs again? No, he kind of pootles around and puts an okay-ish time in that doesn't get him out of danger, and then sits in the garage. While there's cars going round that are obviously going faster as the track evolves, and you're thinking, Perez is going to get done here. And there he is, sitting in the garage, and then boom, guess what? He's out. If that was Ferrari, the press would have had, and all of us would have absolutely gone all in on them. But for some reason, this one's just kind of gone under the radar.
Is there a game plan for time deleted track limits and then rescinded the deletion? I don't think that's in anyone's strategy book.
No, but the
why I'm
time that
going
was even the time that was reinstated wasn't particularly quick. I think that one actually got past and wouldn't have kept him in either. So why wasn't he out there on a much faster car trying to make sure he wasn't knocked out? I don't know why Red Bull didn't send him out again.
Yeah, that is a good point. So
that's what I'm saying. If Ferrari do that, if that's Charles sitting in the garage while he's watching people go past his time and he's suddenly in the danger zone, everyone piles in and says, oh yeah, Ferrari strike again. Whereas this time it's kind of like, oh well, that's the 6th consecutive knockout for Perez in Hungary in Q2. He just doesn't like this track. Well, yeah, he's always going to get knocked out if he sits in the garage. Anyway.
First of all, Ferrari saves their strategy mistakes for the race, and they do much bigger ones than that. So let's take it easy for a second on comparing the two. But then, of course, we go to Q3.
Oh my gosh, Q3. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, talk about it. Tell me what you want to say.
No, you go. This was just amazing. It was just such an amazing Q3, but you first.
Well, I loved watching it, right? I love the fact that as they're going around, you see the Ferraris just building pace, and Max had a little error. And you see the idea of the Ferraris really stepping into pole. And it looks like, to me at least, that you've got Carlos on pole, Charles second, and Max, who had no power on the final run to try to fix his little error, is going to be 10th. And so I'm sitting there explaining this to my father. I'm actually on a short holiday, as I put out, and I'm sitting in my car right now recording this, so apologies if the sound isn't perfect.
Apologies if the handover between the two of us, because we can't see each other for the first time ever recording this. We have no visual clues going between the two of us at all.
We're still way ahead of Ferrari. And so what blew my mind as I'm trying to explain F1 to my dad is all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you get, as I'm explaining why the Ferraris are good and what happened to the Red Bulls and watch Mercedes, but maybe not today, you get this. And just out of the blue, George Russell, just amazing. I thought that was the coolest ending to a quali in a while, to see someone come barreling across the line like that.
And he didn't go fastest in any sector. I think this is kind of what the commentary team only cottoned on to, the fact, I think, in the final last few corners that he was actually up on Sainz, because it was like it caught them by surprise as well. It was like, oh, Sainz, what a fantastic lap, and he's got pole, and Max is down in 10th because of his engine issue. And then it was just this silver arrow came flying around the corner out of nowhere, and it's like, no, this has got to be a mistake. There's got to be a timing mistake with the board here. There's no way George has just gone first in a Mercedes. Which is absolutely bizarre thing to say, that here we are, whatever it is it race 9? What race are we? I've lost track. We are however many races in, and if you'd have told me last year that we would say that we would be shocked that Mercedes have got a pole, I wouldn't have believed you. Because last year, we were just all expecting Mercedes just to carry on. They're always the one that pick up the new regs better than anybody else, so we're just waiting for Mercedes dominance. And here we are in Hungary, and we are actually surprised that Mercedes have managed to get a pole position. It's just insane. So, I guess Brian isn't going to tell me what he thinks about quali, because I think I've actually lost him, which is actually one of the plus sides sometimes of Brian being remote, that he'll get cut off and I won't have to listen to his stupid voice anymore. But I'm just going to monologue for a second and wait for him to reconnect.
I've been here the whole time, baby.
Oh, you're such a liar. You didn't. You did not answer me when I asked you what you thought about the end of quali. But
it was a pensive pause.
I love the fact that we are so committed to this pod that you are basically MacGyvering your own internet connection out of pieces and gum and tinfoil, and we're still going to bring a quality episode to the listeners.
I mean, if I'm being honest with you, I'm massaging my phone with my water bottle because it's too hot. But anyway,
I don't want to know what you're massaging, given the fact that you've been on too much of a Mike Crack drive today. So let's get on to the race before your phone overheats and we can't even finish the episode. So, okay.
Yeah. I loved the start. I loved watching people fighting and negotiating position. I thought it was an epic start when they showed the replays eventually of Max kind of sticking it in the middle there, and I loved watching Fernando and Esteban and Alpine on Alpine crime, and Fernando was pissed. He got on the radio. He was angry with Esteban, but as they did that, it just opened it up for Lewis. He just like, I'll take that, thanks.
Yeah. When they showed the onboard of Max, they said, what was the phrase they used? He approached turn 1 like the driver going for a world champion than he is. In other words, I don't want to get stuck in there. He just backed out when those doors in front of him started closing. It was like, I've got nothing to gain here by trying to stick through the middle of this. I'm just going to back out and see how it rolls. And then they all tumbled over each other anyway, but with no one crashing, which is what I found is the most surreal thing. When it didn't look that bad when you saw it in real time, but when they showed all those various different replays, lots of cars all came within a whisker of taking each other out.
And I don't want to use my father as a barometer here, but he was watching this. He goes, oh, like he couldn't believe how close the cars were. He goes, how fast are they going? I'm like, fast. So it was a great start, but George, we got to talk about the leader. George kind of pulled away eventually, but the defending on the first handful of laps, man, that was really good. He had Carlos right behind him. I thought that was epic racing for the first, half of the lap between the two of them. I loved watching it. And then you just watch the Red Bulls kind of start working their way through the field as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I missed this because you corrected me on our notes, but I don't think they showed it on TV. They showed K-Mag with his end plate hanging off, and they were like, oh, he's probably going to have to go in soon, or he might get whichever flag it is. Was it black and orange for kind of
black
dodgy stuff on your car?
Correct.
And then you kind of corrected me, well, he's already been in because he's now last. I'm like, oh yeah, when did that happen?
Well, probably while you were having your second beer of the morning.
Probably while I was typing this note, actually, because I'm pretty sure that when I started typing the note and I looked down and then I looked back up and suddenly he was last. But yeah, and then we just had lots of little battles everywhere, which I totally wasn't expecting, because you come into this, well, if you know anything about this track, you come into it not expecting a lot of overtakes. They mentioned it multiple times on the commentary that this is kind of second to Monaco in terms of inability to put moves on people, but these new cars, these new regs, they hadn't read the script. They were serving up, throwing it up at the inside, the good old switcheroo, I think is it turn 1, turn 2, where you'd kind of attack on the outside, hang it out there, and then undercut on the way back through. It was just great. There were so many battles all the way up the field, which was also probably made spicier by the fact that, like you said earlier, we had both the Red Bulls cruising their way through the field as well.
It was fun to watch that. I got to say then, lap 11, we got Crofty and Martin talking about how they had 3 Brits in the top 5. They're like, pardon this racing event for a quick British update. And they just sat there and waxed poetic about the Brits in the top 5. I'm like, all right.
They also messed up.
Move it.
They
It's a
also messed
message
up their
from
reference. They got so
Formula 1,
excited.
ED Formula One podcast.
They messed up their reference. They were getting so excited. They said, "Oh yeah, it's great to see the Brits doing well." Then they wanted to give a shout out to the English ladies team, soccer team that is playing Germany today at Wembley Stadium. Now it's the European Championships, but according to them, they're going to go and try and win the World Cup today, which means they're actually going to have to go and win a trophy that isn't on offer. But never mind. They got excited. They got excited. Bless them.
Yeah, that's all right. Then Lando had Lewis and Max right behind him. They got them all at once in one corner. That was a tough one. And then it was interesting. It was kind of the Noah's Ark. By lap 13, you had George, Carlos, Charles, Lewis, Max, Sergio, Lando, the 2 Alpines, and then Danny Rick in 10th. So you had 5 teams making up the top 10, and a lot of them in clumps. So it was fascinating. Max said his clutch was slipping. Who really knows? But then the pit stop started, and this is where it got a little saucy.
And it didn't look like it was going to get saucy at first, right? It actually looked like Ferrari looked like they made a dummy call. They said box, and nobody went in. So George responded potentially, or I'm sure Mercedes were probably planning it anyway. But it's like, oh yeah, good call, because George had gone out on the softs. George blinks first and comes in. Ferrari stay out on the mediums. I'm thinking, okay, cool. They run these mediums for a bit longer so that they can take advantage of that. This is looking good for Ferrari. And then it all starts, where are we? Probably about lap 21. It just all suddenly becomes the Ferrari Groundhog Day.
And so first off, the dummy pit stop move. For new listeners, that's, the team radio is heard by other teams. And so when they'll call someone into box, knowing they're not going to box, they're not coming in for the pits, they'll even run mechanics out with tires. And there's some regulations about what you can and can't do. But Ferrari pulled the dummy move, and sometimes you call it and then just do the opposite of what the other team does. So the driver can make that decision to go on by. But it was fascinating. And I know some new listeners sent me notes like, can you do that? Never thought of that. That was really cool. That was probably the highlight of the Ferrari strategy, was the fake pit stop. Because then they started pitting. And
that
it was just
the peak of their race.
It
all goes downhill from here.
It does. 2 weeks in a row. And I mean, basically the whole season.
They threw, right, so we probably are about to get on to Ferrari rant now, right? But actually the rant comes in another 18 laps. But even right now, okay, to me, they clearly just don't have any clue. They claimed, I think, that the mediums, they had burnt up a bit more after being aggressive, defending or what have you. But was it 2 laps later or 3 or 4 laps later that they brought Sainz in after George? There is no way that medium tyre should only have 3 or 4 laps more life than a soft. It just
didn't make any sense that you would box so early on mediums, leaving so much time on the tire out there. And it was a slow stop for Carlos anyway. So he gets a slow stop, a too early stop, and then it's almost like the Ferrari team pit and move to any tire that feels right without thinking, what are they going to do next? What happens later in the race? Because they hosed up the whole world with Charles.
Well, no, but we haven't got as far as that, right? Yeah. So everyone saw that and kind of went, well, it's medium. So obviously, Ferrari are doing the medium, soft strategy, which is 2 long stints of medium and then like a super fast final 10 on the soft. Which I'm sitting there thinking, that makes sense, Ferrari. Nicely done. This car is a fast car. Slap a set of softs on it right at the end and bring it home. Well done, Ferrari. And then this is the part now that is going to really, to me, highlight why Ferrari's strategic department is a series of I don't even know what. I don't want to be derogatory to say chimpanzees, because I think chimpanzees would do a better job. But whatever it is, that is the adequate explanation. So Alonso, Ocon, K-Mag and Mick are all on the hards. And we get a good, this is about lap 27-ish. And we get, first off, we get Danny Rick gets a buy one, get one free on the Alpines. He comes up on one of them. They're both on the hards. And everyone listen along, especially if you didn't watch the race. The hards look like terrible tyres, and the Alpines are just skating around. I think one of the commentary team called them concrete tyres because they were pointless. They just didn't work. And Danny Rick made a move on one and got both of them in the same move, and you could almost see his smile through his helmet.
Totally.
Oh, it was amazing, right? But this was a running theme now. Looking at both the Haas and both of the Alpines running on these hards, they were going nowhere. So, okay, is this your one and only stop and you've switched compound and you're running all the way to the end now, so you just got to make sure you don't fall 20 seconds behind the car in front, and then when they all have to pit again, you're going to come through. Maybe that's the strategy. But if that is, it's a gamble because these tyres look terrible. And then, well, actually, we probably should do the Charles and George move first, right? Before we really dump on Ferrari, right, Brian?
Yeah. I mean, I loved the racing the two of them had, going back and forth. I loved watching them. I thought it was clean, right? It was laps 29, 30, 31 until the pass eventually. I wrote, as I was looking at this, I'm like, man, if this were 2021 and we had the lead being decided this closely with this much, sort of back and forth of I'm going to come up on the inside. No, I'm going to close you off. No, I'm going to go around after the long pit straight. I'm going to try to get you on the outside. No, I'm going to close that door. Lap after lap after lap. Clean racing. I was loving it. It was great. I thought actually that was probably one of my favorite parts of the race was the Charles and the George back and forth for the lead there. I thought it was great.
And when Charles got him, I thought, well, this is it. That was the move for the win.
Right.
Everybody came in and there was another round of stops, and Max went in quite early, lap 40. There's 30 to go. He goes on mediums. I'm like, oh, okay. That's a long stretch for the mediums because we haven't seen them do that 30 laps yet. He came out, there was a bit of carnage, he had a spin, and people took advantage, but at the same time, Charles came in.
At
and
40.
I'm expecting to see, on the lap 40, same time I think Max came in, I can't remember who came in first, but basically Max went out on mediums,
Yep.
Charles is in, I'm expecting to see the yellow stripe going on to Charles's, thinking this is his second set of mediums, and then he'll go soft for the last 10, and what do we see, Brian?
Hards. The concrete tires. The bricks that had not been working for anybody. And it's still, if the hard was in your bag, I still don't understand the timing of some of the first stops.
No.
If this was your plan to go to the end. Like I said, it's like they don't have the whole thing strategized in different versions. We know they have, for 15 plans, plan A through K, but do none of them actually consider what happens if you make a change during the race and do something different? It just, I don't know. And they put these concrete rocks on, and it was just terrible at this point. He was slowly sinking through the field.
Yeah, slowly sinking. He goes out and is just being eaten up by everybody, and you're thinking, well, if everyone else has got to stop and you don't, and you can just not fall 20 seconds behind Max, then maybe this comes good for you. But then, oh my gosh, I know we're probably skipping over some bits, but I'm just going to fast forward to 15 laps. 15 laps on tyres that probably should last to the end. They then roll the dice again and go, well, these tyres aren't working, let's put him on softs. I was like, I honestly believe, Brian, I don't know what you think, I've not seen any kind of reaction come out yet. I don't think he was supposed to go into hards. I think someone in Charles's garage has royally screwed up. That was supposed to be mediums. They've put the hards on. They've driven out. Benotti's seen this flash of red car with white on the wheels and probably turned around to one of the engineers and gone, my eyes must be playing tricks on me. That looked like white tyres. And then someone's gone,
My favorite part was Max realized how slow. First of all, we haven't really given Max enough credit at this point. He started 10th on a track that's hard to overtake. I mean, I know we'll get to the end and his victory, and we'll celebrate him a bit then. But he was back up by the front pretty fast. And he came out, as I think it was on like lap 40, 42, and he passed Charles. And then he decides, you know what, that was fun. I'm going to do a 360 and let him get past me, and I'm going to pass him again. So he did. I mean, if I'm a Max fan, I don't know what's better. When you got blue flags on Lewis earlier this year and you got to lap him, or when you get to take Charles out twice within the span of a few laps by
It,
doing a
it
360
has
in the
to
middle.
be it has to be the Lewis thing, because today can't have been any satisfaction, because I think the guy that drives my mail van in his mail van could have overtaken Charles on those
Oh, come
tires.
on.
They were just terrible.
But it was Groundhog Day. It was bad strategy for Carlos. It was bad strategy for Charles. It was poor timing and expectations of later pits by going medium medium. It was an early stop on the mediums. It was just a mess all around. Like I said, like they had no plan for what came next when they made some of their decisions. And the fact that they finished off the podium at a track that everyone agreed favored their car more than anybody's, and they had the pace, is mind-boggling to me.
I know, I agree. And as much as, I agree with you that Max deserves all the credit. Phenomenal drive, and he totally deserved the win. The other person that totally deserved to be up there, and I would say is maybe the difference, maybe it's psychological, the mental strength between Lewis and Charles. Because Lewis, okay, maybe he's got nothing to lose because he's just trying to show how he's still got it and this car has still got some performance that he can out of it. But they slapped those softs on that thing and he was like rocket ship again. It was hammer time, and it's just a bit disappointing that we ran out of laps to see him actually catch Max and maybe have some shenanigans towards the end. And the reason I say about the psychological thing is that Ferrari, I believe, is quicker than the Mercedes, especially around this circuit. And when they slapped the softs on
Yes.
Charles, he went for a Sunday afternoon drive. He didn't even make
didn't
a
move
dent
anywhere.
into Perez. Now, there is no way that Ferrari on light fuel and on softs wasn't quicker than what he was doing. I think in his head, he was just done. He was like just annoyed with the strategy, believed there should have been a win, and I think he just brought it home in six. I'm a Charles fan, but I really do. I didn't see like he was pushing it on the edge to try and make up everything that he could. He just didn't seem to have the bit between his teeth.
Well, agreed on the difference there. I would actually say I'm not a Max apologist. I appreciate Max, and I do appreciate how great he is. And he is, I still say, the best driver on the grid now. And if they were all in the same cars, I'd put my money on Max. I would disagree a little bit with you, Rob. Lewis was on that light, low fuel, soft tire Mercedes was flying. Agreed. But he was still 10 seconds ahead of Lewis on the last lap. I mean, that's at best 7 or 8 laps for him to get to him. And that's a lot of laps to go. Like, there was a lot more time to happen. Max came across the line coasting, basically, because of the drizzle, so he didn't lose traction. So I get your point. I agree Lewis was
but
flying.
Lewis was a second and a half faster than Max at the peak when he was chasing down.
Yeah, that's 6-7 laps with 10 seconds. That was the delta was 10 seconds on the last lap. So I know he came down faster, but Max was basically giving it 3/4 throttle, so he didn't get caught. He used his lead to his advantage to make sure he finished. So, I mean, I get it. It was fun watching what happened with Mercedes. I'll just say this, my final thought on the top of the leaderboard. It felt like Red Bull, and I know you were complaining about the quali with Checo, but it felt like the Red Bulls and the Mercedes are run by professional strategists who know how to execute pit stops. They've had mistakes over the years, of course, everyone does, but it feels like they had plans. And here's what we're going to do. And they dictated their race. And it feels like Ferrari tries to react to what every other team is doing around them. And it comes up with this muddled mess of mush. And it just drove me nuts again to watch that happen. So they have thrown away the championship this year. I don't think there's any other way, at least to fight. They've thrown away a championship fight. We shouldn't give it to them. I was just surprised.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's the Drivers' Championship done. I saw somebody, I think it was a friend of the show, Nate Saunders from ESPN, tweeted that, the gap now, Max can afford to not even turn up to the next 3 races. And even if Charles wins all 3 of them, he'll still be leading. So it's a huge gap up at the top there. But maybe they can go off into the break and regroup, and we get a little bit of. I don't want to wish bad luck on Red Bull, but I do like things to be exciting, so I wouldn't mind a couple of DNFs maybe at the other side of the break just to sort of spice things up. But the way Max is driving, like, he will totally deserve to have this title wrapped up with races to go, and Ferrari will totally not deserve to be anywhere near it because of the way they've handled it. So
one little note, just closing the actual race. Okay, maybe I am a conspiracy theorist. I like to apologize, but Seb passed Lance for 10th on about lap or 2 to go, and I couldn't tell if it was a retirement gift a payback for the corner last week, team orders, or an actual racing pass. I couldn't tell which of the four things that was. But Seb finished in the points, finished 10th,
Yeah.
and Lance was 11th. So flip-flop the French finish for those two. And Aston Martin got Seb into the points, or however that worked, but it happened for him.
No, agree. Right, well, that's our final race review of the first half of the season wrapped up. We have nothing to preview for next week as of yet. We are going to try to keep some content coming during the break, and we'll definitely be back 1 week before the races start because we'll at least have a Belgium preview to do. So I think really to kind of sign us out this week, it feels like we should have our final DRS guest of this first half on. Do you want to introduce this guest, Brian, being as yet again it's another one of your friends?
Well, we went back and forth. We've had some listeners that we have met through the pod, and then we've had a couple friends. And so with your friend Ben last week, it was an opportunity for me to have my friend David on, and you'll hear David here shortly. We worked together and became friends over quite some time. I never knew he was into motorsport, so it's a fun interview. Check it out right now.
Okay, so it's that time again. We've got another guest here on 100 Seconds of DRS. Now, I was going to beat up on Brian because it is another friend of Brian. However, being as he's both an F1 fan and an Arsenal fan, I really can't do that. So welcome to the dirty side of the track, David.
Thank you, Rob. Good to be here with a fellow F1 fan and Arsenal fan. So awesome.
It's amazing to have you on, David. It's great to see you and catch up. And as we were joking before, apparently I have a type. Like when I work with people, I look for friends who are F1 fans and Arsenal fans. And I didn't know either of those things about David until after I left that job. So
now you know, and knowing's half the battle, right?
That's exactly right. So if there are any listeners out there who are F1 fans and Arsenal fans, let me know where you work. Maybe I'll come work with you and we can hang out.
Well, I'm already thinking, Pit Lane Paul is an Arsenal fan, so I'm not even sure we need you anymore, Brian. I'm thinking me, David, Paul, we can get the Arsenal F1 tie-in up and running.
That sounds
Pit Lane
good.
Paul, call me.
Yeah, it's been fun. Bye, everybody. But no, in all seriousness, David, it's great having you here. Thanks for doing this. And, you know, one of the things that I found interesting, as I kind of alluded to, is that I didn't even know you were an F1 fan. And you shared a little bit over texts when we trade notes about kind of how you became an F1 fan. Could you tell some of the other Dirty Siders how you got into to F1?
Yeah, so I was a fairly long time motorsport fan, having been into NASCAR, and as I was telling you earlier, my buddies all hated road course racing. I always loved the strategy of it, and just loved whenever Sonoma or Watkins Glen would on. And then during the pandemic, there were no sports, and right after F1 came back on, I was up early on a Sunday morning and flipping through the channels, and lo and behold, here was an F1 race, and I watched it. Just love the strategy, like you, Brian. I'm a tire nerd, so I love figuring out the tires and the strategy, and just loved everything about it. And then so I continued watching, and then saw the Roman Grosjean huge explosion, and ever since then I've just really been into it. And unlike most, I didn't get into Drive to Survive first, and then F1.
You went the other way around?
Watching F1, and then I found out, oh, there's this show called Drive to Survive, and so then I watched that. So,
that's amazing. Yeah, no, just so everyone can appreciate, he says he's hooked, but he's being modest, if anything. A couple weekends ago, I got a text from David, said, "Did you see the F2 race?" And I said I hadn't seen it yet. And he starts describing it to me and how he's watching it on the app and how exciting the race was, and I need to go watch it. And I'm like, whoa, you are really into this, and I love it.
It was an awesome tire race, complete with starting wet, turning dry. It was a great race. You still have to go watch it. It's a great race.
It is still queued up in my to-do list, but that is fantastic. So, sorry, Rob, I got one more question for David. Do people you work with know you're a big F1 fan?
It's definitely getting out there. The little secret's getting out there. So you go through life and find out more and more people are watching F1 on the weekend, and you learn more and more about it and find more people into it. So I think it's amazing watching the growth of the sport here.
So with the growth of the sport and you being a fan, that means how many people have you converted to the dirty side so far?
I'm still working on that.
Oh, come on, man. if like a dirty side sticker showed up at your house or your office, would you put it somewhere where people could see it, or?
It might wind up on my work computer. I got a couple other stickers on there. It could be a talking point.
I might have to make that happen on note to self. Very good.
Well,
So actually, go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
I was going to say, you've got the badge of honor for watching F2. You've got the badge of honor, reluctantly, for being a tyre nerd as well.
Yes.
I think there's another badge of honor that's coming your way, which is going to be to take part in the 100 seconds of DRS. Now, that has to be the biggest honor amongst all the honors of being a motorsport fan.
Definitely the biggest badge on my shirt.
Oh man! All right. So as is per usual, when the 100 seconds guest is someone one of us knows, the other person gets to ask the questions. And so, David, you will be in the capable, sometimes, hands of Rob for questions, and I will be the incapable hands working the timer. David, are you ready on your side?
I think, but I'm afraid I'm gonna fail. But I think I'm ready.
Oh, you are good. Unlike Yuki Tsunoda's DRS from Baku. Rob, are you ready?
I think I am.
Okay, I'm trying to get my app ready. Start in 3, 2, 1.
Who's your favourite driver on the grid currently?
Verstappen.
First poster you had on your bedroom wall?
Alyssa Milano from Growing Pains.
Yes.
Favourite F1 track?
Spa.
Mario or Luigi?
Actually, Funky Kong. I always took Funky Kong in Mario Kart.
Favourite livery of all time on an F1 car?
Ooh, I really like the Aston Martins today. I like those.
Yeah.
Favourite musician or musical group?
Sturgill Simpson.
I don't even know what that is, but we'll come back to that.
If you could swap the cars out for another type of transportation, what would you like to see them racing in?
Dump trucks.
Oh, yeah. Would you rather be chased by one horse-sized duck or 10 duck-sized horses?
I think 10 duck-sized horses.
A wet or a dry race?
Dry to wet.
Rolling starts or standing starts?
Standing. Sorry, standing for sure.
I've got to ask this one. Tyres, interesting or not interesting?
Interesting.
Batman or Superman?
Superman.
If you could add an F1 venue, where would it be?
Road America.
If you were a superhero, would you be the? If you were in a superhero movie, would you be the hero or the villain?
Hero.
Sleep in or get up early?
Get up early and watch F1.
First memory of F1.
COVID.
Favorite non-motorsport sport?
Soccer.
Yes. If you could add a James Bond type gadget to an F1 car, what would it be?
Thumbtacks out the back.
What's your favorite cheese?
Gouda.
And we went over by 2 seconds, but I allowed the cheese question. So hold on a second. Hold on. Your favorite non-motorsport sport is soccer? Like Arsenal, like we were talking about? It's not Clemson football?
Followed closely by Clemson football.
What?
Yes.
All these years working with you, and I thought you were just like tattooed Clemson football all over yourself.
I also watched the national championship Clemson soccer team, but my son is a soccer player, so it's kind of become a family thing.
Oh, wow. Well, that's great, but I'm very surprised. And just for listeners, I didn't tell David about the podcast. He found out about it from somebody, a mutual connection. So I didn't put him up to listening. But what is Sturgill Simpson? Why do I not know that band or person?
Yeah, it's a person. Alternative country music, probably one you wouldn't have heard from, but great music. You should go check him out.
Could I ask a favor? Could you send me a link to your favorite song, and maybe I'll repost it so everyone on Twitter can appreciate it too?
I'll send a link to my favorite album.
All right.
Are you just trying to get back in his good books, being as you don't share the love of Arsenal with him? You're just trying to get back up above me now by trying to sort of brown nose him.
I'm afraid I lost my spot hosting the podcast. Is what basically happened here.
Wow, we might have to open up auditions based on today.
Well, but can anyone else really say, "Hey, now"? I mean, that's like trade
I think
secret.
they can.
It is your trademark, Brian.
Yeah, for sure. And then, so Spa, favorite track?
It is my favorite. I'm really looking forward to it coming on next few weeks.
Yeah.
And what's your thoughts about it potentially going away then?
That would be a bad move.
I did see a tweet today that was saying that kind of with the more tracks to calendar spot ratio, then maybe it might make sense to start putting Spa, the Dutch one that I can never say, is Zandvoort, and which one else would be close? There's basically 3 tracks that were all within about like 3.5 hours driving of each.
Yeah. Yes, sorry, that was on our Twitter today.
Did you retweet it? You didn't say it.
No, one of
You
our
weren't clever
listeners
enough
did.
to have
I
come
think
up
it
with
was.
this.
I think it was JP, but don't quote me on that.
Okay, but it was basically saying there's 3 tracks that are all within about 3.5 hours of each other. So in terms of logistics and where the fans could go and all that kind of stuff, then it would make sense. Rather than like lose Spa altogether and say we'd never go back there, then we might have to put up with a kind of a 3-year rota type thing, which I think I'd be okay with if I knew it wasn't going away. I'd love to see it as an ever present, but if it was the choice between it being off the calendar altogether, then you've got to take what you can get, right?
That's not the choice. You're making up a choice. We just keep it on the calendar and let some other race deal with it.
Yeah,
Better
it's not going to
some
happen,
than
O'Brien.
none, but let's keep it on the course. Let's keep it on. Let's keep it on.
Oh, wow. Well, Rob, anything else for David? Any other questions for him?
No, I won't turn this into an Arsenal discussion because it won't be target audience.
At least one of the 3 of us would have no idea what was going on. But David, this was awesome. It was so great to catch up with you, and thank you for being a part of the Dirty Side and for participating today. You were fantastic on the 100 Seconds of DRS, and I would say... Oh, Rob, go ahead.
I do have a question quickly, which we haven't covered for you, David. Do you play a musical instrument?
While I love music, I'm terribly untalented at music.
So we can't tempt you into the Sapstat jingle challenge.
No, I heard that last week and thought, boy, if I only could do that, I would love to participate. But sadly, you excluded me from that.
Well, I also am not talented. So.
If any relatives play you can always submit on their behalf. We've already had one entry this week, and came from someone's son. So it doesn't have to be you.
Maybe my son could do a jingle with his saxophone.
There we go.
That would be amazing. That would be
ask.
amazing. And we appreciate that. But for all other Dirty Side listeners, if you'd like to participate in the 100 Seconds of DRS, as always, please let us know. We appreciate hearing from you, either at our Gmail at dirtysideofthetrack@gmail.com or through the website or on social. Thanks so much. David, thank you so much for doing this. It was great, man.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Great to
Up
meet
the
you
Gunners.
guys. Go Gunners.
I don't know what that means.
Okay, I'll give you that one, Brian. He was really cool to hang out with, and that's not just because I learnt that he's an Arsenal fan. Actually, I was going to say that we're signing out. We need to leave the sign out for the pod, and I think we'll let it go from the review through to music this week, Brian, because he's been so good to us throughout the show that I think taking us out of the first half of this season, what do you say that we hand the reins over to Pit Lane Paul one last time?
Sounds brilliant. Everyone have a wonderful break. We'll be back next week with something, probably a first half review, but stick around. Paul, take us out, my friend.
Hey guys. Well, that was Hungarian Grand Prix. It was actually very, very good. For a track that is notoriously pretty bad for any real action, it was very entertaining. The threat of rain was pretty important. And actually looking out towards the city, the last 10 laps of the race, it was really heavy. I don't know, maybe it would have spiced it up even more, but I think it was actually very good. So again, Mercedes, superb. I said this before, they keep getting the points, they keep clawing away, and they're never out of the Constructors' Championship. Will they win it? No. Will it be second? Maybe. Ferrari again? Look, question marks, but okay, for a car that was as quick as theirs was, to not finish on the podium, I guess, is a bit of a letdown for them. But I don't really know exactly what's gone on with them, so I'm not going to make any real judgment there. Apart from that, it was a race actually full of excitement. It was actually one of the best Hungarian Grand Prix I can remember for a while. So fair play to all the people who made it quite a spectacle. It's unusual me being so positive about a race. I've sort of lost myself here. The only negative thing I am going to say is apparently in Hungary it's rude to clink beer glasses, which I found to be quite a annoying one, because that's all I've done seemingly for the entire week. Personally, I'm glad now the summer shut down, I can actually go and hang my carcass of a body up and dry it out a little bit. Before I actually head over to the United States, I'm in a bicycle race in Steamboat, Colorado, the middle of the month. So look forward to once again stepping into the great country of the USA. And for the rest of Formula One, yeah, we got the summer shutdown. It's a bit of a break for the guys. It's a long season. It's hard work, and it's thoroughly deserved. And do you know, for a race up, at Budapest, I am quite shocked it was so good. Some good racing at the front. I think from our side, if Valtteri actually hadn't have had the issue he's had, would it have been closer between Lewis and Max? We'll never know. As I look outside now, there's steady rain falling, still not enough really to bring out any sort of intermediate tyre conditions, but it would have still made it quite slippy. So, kudos to Budapest, great race, but man, are we looking forward to the summer shutdown now. So, and that's pretty much signing off until we go to Belgium in a few weeks' time, and then the hard work really begins. We got, 9 races left, and it'll pass in a heartbeat. Until next time, guys, good job.